Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty huge that's happening in Africa's Sahel region. There's a new alliance forming, a so-called coup belt, and it's making waves that are being felt way beyond the continent. Right, so what we're seeing is a group of military-led nations, we're talking Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and they are really charting a new course. They're basically challenging the old way of doing things and in the process, redrawing the entire geopolitical map.
So how did this all start? Well, it begins with the creation of a brand new pact. And trust me, this is a big deal, a major sign that things are shifting in the region.
In September of 2023, these three countries came together to form what they call the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES. Now, it started as a mutual defense pact. An attack on one is an attack on all. But it's already evolved into a formal confederation. And that's a really crucial difference, right? It's not just a military promise anymore. This is a real step toward linking their political and economic futures together.
And then, they did something truly radical. They all decided to leave ECOWAS. Now, you have to understand, the Economic Community of West African States has been the main regional group for decades, promoting democracy and stability. So walking away like this, it wasn't just leaving a club. It was a massive statement, a definitive break from the established order. So who's really driving this whole thing? Well, a lot of the momentum comes from the voice of one man in particular, Burkina Faso's leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. His powerful anti-colonial speeches haven't just fired up people at home, they're echoing with young people all across Africa.
And just listen to how he talks. He frames his leadership not as some personal power trip, but as him just being a symbol for an idea that he says is unstoppable. He's basically arguing that he himself doesn't really matter. The real force is this idea of sovereignty, and that can't be stopped with a bullet.
And here he gets to the absolute heart of his argument, that this isn't really a military fight at all. It's ideological. The fear, he says, isn't about weapons. It's about African nations finally thinking for themselves, questioning those old power dynamics, and saying no to foreign influence. And he does not hold back. He's flat out accused the United States of using terrorist groups as tools, basically to justify having a military presence, to keep the region in a constant state of war, and to get its hands on natural resources. It's a huge accusation.
Okay, so that's the powerful anti-imperialist message. But what's the reality? What's actually happening on the ground in Burkina Faso? Well, it's devastatingly complex.
You hear the junta talking about dignity, about resistance, about choosing not to be silent or afraid.
But the human cost of this conflict is just staggering. Human Rights Watch estimates that 6,000 civilians were killed in just the first 8 months of 2024 alone. 6,000 people.
And the thing is, the violence is coming from all sides. On the one hand, you have Islamist armed groups, like the al-Qaeda affiliate JINIM, who are responsible for killing over 1,000 civilians. But at the same time, state security forces and their militias are accused of killing at least 1,000 civilians themselves and making critics disappear as part of their own operation.
And when you dig into the reports, the details are just horrific. On one single day in February, the military allegedly executed over 200 civilians, including dozens of children. Human rights groups are now saying these killings could be part of a campaign that amounts to crimes against humanity. It's brutal. And all of this has forced over 2 million people to flee their homes.
This timeline tells another story, too, about just how unstable the government itself is. The junta keeps announcing that it's stopped another coup attempt. And what's interesting is that these announcements often come right after a major massacre by insurgents. It points to a really fragile situation, where the government seems to be under constant threat, both from the outside and from within.
So, all of this raises a question. What's the price of this push for sovereignty? Well, it's come with some really concrete and, highly controversial political moves.
On the world stage, the junta has completely cut its long-standing military ties with France. At the same time, it's cozying up to new partners, like Russia, and it's pointing fingers at neighbors like the Ivory Coast, accusing them of trying to destabilize the country. Meanwhile, back at home, any talk of a return to democracy is on hold. The military has said it's staying in power for at least another 5 years.
And this new path has also meant there's way less room for disagreement. The junta is using emergency laws to silence anyone who speaks out. And they're taking this incredible step of forcibly conscripting critics, journalists, activists, even judges, and sending them to the front lines to fight in the very war they might have been reporting on.
So all of this really leaves us with one massive central question. Is what we're witnessing a true new dawn for African sovereignty, a genuine liberation for the people of the Sahel like its leaders claim? Or is it just a slide into a new kind of authoritarianism, one that ends up fueling the exact same cycle of violence and instability it promised to fight? That is the question at the very heart of this defiant new bloc.